All right, welcome to Star Trek The Next Generation Unsung episodes. I hope everybody here is a Star Trek fan or wants to be a Star Trek fan. Um, I love doing presentations like this, and I will introduce myself a little bit right now. All right, so let me move that down. My name is Matt. I run Dice Geeks. I am a writer. I have written novel. I have created RPG resource books to help game masters. I love doing presentations like this because I feel the more we are exposed to fiction in the form of television, film, literary fiction, novels such as that, the more we are exposed to stories and storytelling, the better storytellers we become. That makes our role-playing games better, whether we are the DM, GM, or player character. This exposure to stories and storytelling techniques, I think, are very powerful, and they help us be better role players, better game masters, and in the long run, I hope they can also help us be better writers, because I know most everyone who plays role-playing games wants to write at some point in their life, or that's what it seems like anyway. All right, so let me get some of this stuff up here. All right, so I wanted to talk about some unsung episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, or at least that's what I'm calling them. Now, just to be clear, right, I am not arguing these are some of the best episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. I am saying that either the episode itself is underappreciated or there are certain aspects of the episode that are underappreciated and I think could get a bit more love than they do otherwise. All right. So again, so when I say a name of an episode and you're like, oh my gosh, he's saying this episode is like the best episode. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying there's pieces of these episodes that are good and can be appreciated. All right. Here is another kind of intro statement. I hold contrary opinions about Star Trek The Next Generation. Don't worry. I am a huge fan, so that one is is one that we can agree on. I'm a huge fan of the show. I grew up watching the show, right? It premiered when I think I was 13 years old when it premiered. I grew up watching it, and I pretty much loved all of it. But I do hold contrary opinions, so you may hear some things from me that you don't hear in other places. But as Tam Elbrin told Data, maybe you're just different, and maybe that's okay. All right. So here are some of my opinions. Okay. So if you can see this, let me move this down a little bit. All right. Common opinion. Seasons 1 and 2 are the worst. My opinion, seasons 6 and 7 are the worst, possibly season 4 as well. We'll touch on some of that, I am sure, later on. When we get into some of the episodes, and then also I want to try to move through the content as quickly as possible and then allow you all time in chat to ask as many questions as we want. I love talking Star Trek. So these are some contrary opinions that I hold. I'm not sure what the hate is for season 1 and 2, but that's the common opinion out there. Season 6 and 7, I think, are the weakest, possibly 4 as well. Also, Wesley Crusher's awesome. All right, now I know I've triggered some of you all. Wesley is awesome. And you have to take me back. I guess there is some nostalgia in here. Like I said, I was 13 when the show premiered. I turned 14, I think, a little while after, during the first season somewhere. Will Wheaton is only 2 years older than I am, I believe. So, like, Wesley was my window on the show, right? He was my window into the show, telling me I could be on a starship. And that was awesome. That was awesome. His costuming, not so awesome sometimes. I'm with you there on that one. But I think Wesley is a great character. I think he made the show a lot stronger. I am not sure why he gets all the hate that he gets. Maybe it is the costuming, but that is a temporary thing that could be fixed, especially when he starts wearing the uniform. Um, but I know some criticisms that he always saves the ship. Well, I mean, it's an 80s TV show. The main characters always save the ship. That's just like, that's not a Wesley Crusher thing. They all save the ship. Okay. Everybody, all the main characters save the ship. Okay. But I think he's awesome. So there, you have that. You can kill me in chat if you want, but I think he's awesome. All right. Now, I went through some of these episodes and I picked episodes that are poorly rated on IMDb, but that I still think have quite a bit of merit to them. And like I said, not necessarily my favorite episodes, but I think they have some merit in there. A couple are some of my favorite episodes. I will be upfront about that, or maybe not my favorite episodes, but I certainly do like them. And then there are a few others where, they have an aspect that I like, but I understand what people are talking about when they say, it's not in the upper echelon of episodes. So I hope that's clear. Let me just say again, for everybody who has joined just a little bit later, I am recording this session. I will post it on my YouTube channel a little later, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday, but soon. And for the rest of our lives until the internet goes away. And so what I would, and also as everybody joins, they are muted. If you have any questions or comments or want to disagree with me strenuously, you can do so in the chat. I'm going to try to talk through some of the episodes here just in a second, and I would like to give a lot of time for questions. So, I mean, we're only 7 minutes in here, and I'm about ready to start talking about the episode. So I hope that it makes sense for everybody and is good. So here we go. All right. So the first episode I wanted to mention is Coming of Age. So I think this one actually is on IMDb, the highest rated episode that I picked, but it is still in the lower part of the rankings of the episodes. Now, if you remember this episode, this is where Wesley has to take a Starfleet exam on a planet. There is Commander Remick is introduced, and he is investigating the bridge crew of the Enterprise. Also, there is a young man aboard the Enterprise who does not pass his the pre-entrance exam, so he can't take the test. So he is disgruntled, and Picard has to save him as he steals a shuttlecraft. And then Wesley is put through a bunch of psychological tests that are required for Starfleet cadets, or to get into, I guess this is actually a pre-Starfleet exam. So the young man who didn't pass the test failed the pre-Starfleet exam or something like that. And so just a number of things that I like about this episode. I always thought that some of the psychological testing was pretty interesting. They were still introducing different races and different aliens early in the seasons, or in the series, I should say. That kind of changed toward the end of the show a little bit more. I really liked that they were testing Wesley on how his father died, like some hang up that he has about how his father was killed. So they are testing that because Wesley is going to be a Starfleet officer. I really liked how Picard saves the young man who steals the shuttlecraft. He, of course, makes a mistake and he's going to crash and he is going to die. But Picard talks him through a whole sequence and gets him back on board and saves his life. I thought that was a really great sequence to show that Picard can be can be heroic, even while not leaving the ship. He doesn't have to go on a away team. He can be heroic and on the bridge of the ship. And I thought that was a really great thing. I also love Mordock. As you can see here on the screen, this is the episode that introduces the Benzites, and I really enjoyed the portrayal of Mordock here by actor John Putch. I actually have interviewed John Putch on my podcast, which can also be found on YouTube. He doesn't act anymore, but he is now a director, and he has directed quite a few movies and tons of television shows too. Tons and tons of television shows he has directed. So I thought his portrayal of Mordock was great. I thought his tone of voice was very good. Kind of differentiating them, right? Like, they don't just have a nose ridge. They actually had a big prosthetic kind of piece, which I enjoyed greatly. And I thought that was very good. So Coming of Age is one of the episodes that, if you haven't taken a look at it recently, take a look at it. If it is a lot of fun. I think you can see some interesting storytelling techniques as well when Commander Remick is interrogating or investigating the bridge crew, right? He is talking to one of the members of the crew, and of course he asks them a question, and they walk around the room, and of course they do a nice cinematic kind of cut in between to where he's talking to different people in the chair. So he's like going to ask Data a question, but he walks around, and then it's Beverly, and I thought that was really great. I thought that was a lot of fun. So I like this episode. I think it deserves a little bit more rating than some people give it sometimes. All right, the next one is Pen Pals. And you might have noticed we're sticking a lot to the first and second season, because these tend to be the most kind of reviled episodes. But Pen Pals here, I really enjoy Pen Pals. I just watched it the day before yesterday again, and I think I liked it even more this time that I watched it. This episode is, of course, where the Enterprise is conducting geological surveys of planets in a system where the planets kind of form and then are destroyed really quickly, and they're trying to figure out that mystery. Also, Data receives a transmission from a young female child on one of the planets, and her planet is being destroyed, and her whole people is going to be wiped out, right? Their whole civilization, their whole people are going to be wiped out. And this creates a moral dilemma, right, with the Prime Directive. And we get some great sequences in Picard's quarters where the bridge crew are talking about, and there's, talking about what they should do. And the opinions range from ignoring it to helping them. And it's I think it is quite a good discussion of what the Prime Directive is. Now, you could make some arguments that it's solved in a TV way and things like that. They hear the child's voice, and of course everybody becomes compassionate for the child or whatever, which everybody would do. Most normal people would do. But I thought that was a really great discussion of the Prime Directive. As you can counterpoint that to, say, an episode in season 7, say Homeward, where that episode tries to work on the same principle, but it's morally bankrupt and vile, the way the writers portrayed that discussion of the Prime Directive in the episode Homeward. I don't that episode, I don't get that episode. So but Pen Pals here is done really well. I thought that discussion was handled really well. So they resolve it by saying, well, when it becomes a plea for help, when they're asking for help, then we've got to help. And so of course they do. I also like the subplot, right? Wesley is involved again. Like I said, I love Wesley Crusher, so you can get off my back on that, or yell at me in chat. Um, I love the portrayal of him becoming like a young professional and running the geological survey team. I really enjoy how they handled that. That he is dealing with these older officers, but he has the authority because he is an ensign as well, and he is going to create this team, and he is going to lead this survey. I thought that was great. And it just I think some of these earlier episodes still play into, I know they had missteps. I know they had some missteps here and there, but they still play into the optimistic version of the, vision of the future. And they, showing somebody, I think it's actually, it's unfortunate that we don't get this a lot, but it shows Wesley becoming, like I said, a young professional officer who is going to conduct himself with honesty and integrity as he is, and thoroughness of conducting a survey, right? We don't get that actually a lot in portrayals of people on TV and in movies, right? Say the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, take that for example, right? In that version of Star Trek, Captain Kirk and Spock and the crew are absolutely unprofessional, right? They are unprofessional like all the time. And they would not be in charge of, they shouldn't be put in charge of running, I don't know what. I don't know I don't know what they should be put in. They shouldn't be put in charge of anything. That's what they should be, right? But here we see somebody acting as a professional. I think that is a positive portrayal that we can all use a good dose of occasionally. All right, and I am talking a lot. All right, Skin of Evil. Now, I know Skin of Evil doesn't get a lot of love, and I understand one reason. So, of course, this is the episode in which Tasha is killed. Okay, so if you're saying, hey, I love Tasha, so I don't like Skin of Evil because that's where she's killed, I get it. So I can get that. I can understand that. I can understand. I like Tasha too. So I get that. But usually I see this episode get kind of maligned for other reasons, and that I don't understand. Number one, you'll see something like, oh, well, they just kill Tasha off in one episode, and they talk about it being a meaningless death, and they don't give her, she doesn't have a big heroic death scene or anything. She's just like hit with a force pulse or whatever it is, and she's like flung on the ground and she's dead. And I hear that as a criticism, and I would, kind of tend to agree with that criticism. However, that's exactly what the producers and writers intended it to be, because I think this was a moment of them being very petty, right? Denise Crosby approaches them, says, I want to leave the show. And the producers are like, well, okay, so you're going to leave the show and you're going to become some big movie star. Well, you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to give you some big acting scene that you can use in your reel so you can get movie parts. And we're going to slam the door on you coming back. So we're going to kill off Tasha. So you're not going to come back later when your movie career doesn't work out, and you're not going to have a big scene, big heroic scene in your demo reel when you're trying to get a job. And that has been fairly documented. You can read some of that on some of the various sites, and also Denise Crosby is kind of very active on YouTube and things like that. I don't really, I understand there's power and money and ratings and TV and creation going on, and so a lot of ego, a lot of stuff going on there. However, so that one shouldn't be taken into consideration too much, because that's exactly what the producers wanted. They wanted her to be dead and gone and not give her a big send off or anything like that. However, I do see some other criticisms of the episode. I know Armis is like the malevolent, the malevolent being that kills her is a big oil slick or whatever. But like, I always thought the interaction between him and Counselor Troy was really good. And I see that online that people don't like it. I thought that was rather interesting. I also think it is interesting, kind of the concept of a group of species of alien beings who are able to shed their evil side and like into a physical form and leave it on some planet. I thought that that idea is weird, but it's cool. It's kind of an interesting idea. I always thought about that to counterpoint. We're here at Gen Con, like with Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, think of maybe like the elves in that regard, right? They're able to take their evil and get rid of it. I thought that was an interesting idea. Maybe that could work into something there. I thought that was pretty good. Also, like I said, I liked the character of Tasha. I liked Denise Crosby, but her death here, Tasha's death on the show, actually ends up making the show stronger, not because she's not in it, but because it gives the bridge crew a shared tragedy and something that in future episodes that we can kind of look back on, and it actually ends up strengthening the show and giving depth to Data's character, giving depth to some of the other characters. So I mean, I really enjoy that aspect. So I don't think it was too wasted here, although like I said, I like Tasha. It would have been cool to see her character grow and that, but if it was going to happen, it does make some of the other characters, stand out, gives them a shared tragedy, and I should speed up a little bit. All right, Evolution. So this is the season 3 opener, if you remember. And so a scientist is on board and they're going to study a phenomenon. And of course, Wesley screws up and he creates sentient nanites that then start wreaking havoc on the ship. And that this episode doesn't get a lot of love, but I always think that is quite interesting. Obviously, this marks the return of Gates McFadden as Dr. Crusher after being gone in season 2. It also marks Geordi being promoted to Lieutenant Commander, which is awesome because Geordi's awesome. I know some people give it, a hard time because it's like, oh yeah, well, Wesley, he has a malfunction and his nanites become sentient. Well, that's kind of a common theme. When any computer malfunctions, they become sentient. If we remember elementary Dear Data, right, the holodeck malfunction and Geordi creates a sentient hologram, it's like that just happens. That's whenever a machine goes wrong, it becomes sentient and we have all these problems or whatever. So that's kind of a standard thing that they work on here. What I really like about this episode, is something they've gotten away from. They got away from in the later seasons is that they're actually on an exploration mission, right? We've actually seen that a couple times already, that the Enterprise is actually out here exploring, and they are looking into spatial phenomenons and different things like this. They're actually recording scientific data and stuff. In some of the later seasons, we just start an episode where they're just like doing nothing in space, and I got really frustrated with that. So at least here we're doing something, we're going somewhere, we're exploring. And I did think it was interesting how the guest star on the show was this older scientist who was a man who he was a genius, right? He didn't fit in, people didn't know how to take him, and he was a version of what Wesley could be when Wesley grew up. And I really liked that kind of idea, that this was Wesley could grow into a man like this. He could be a scientist who has a towering intellect, but is totally misunderstood in that. So this is a version of Wesley he's kind of looking at in the future. And I thought that was a kind of a very interesting comparison between those characters, because now Wes can choose, right? He can say, oh, I see what path he took and how he went. Maybe I can do something different. And I thought that was very interesting. All right, so Merit and Snare. Okay. I see this episode doesn't get a lot of love online. So if we remember this episode is where Captain Picard needs his cardiac replacement replaced. I was just going to say his cardiac unit or whatever it is, his artificial heart, he needs that replaced. And he doesn't want Pulaski to do it on board the Enterprise. And so it sets up a scenario where him and Wesley are in the shuttlecraft for like 6 hours. And we get to hear a story about Picard's past, right? We get to hear that Picard was not always a young, disciplined officer, right? Or a highly disciplined by the book officer. He was actually kind of, high on himself, right? He was a hot shot. He was smart. He was smart and he knew it, and he was showing everybody, and he paid a price for it. So to me, that is already right there one reason to like this episode, is because we learn that about Picard. And I thought it was a really interesting way that they did that. I mean, maybe it's not groundbreaking or anything, but I thought it was a fun way to reveal some of this backstory about Picard, because Wesley is questioning his own discipline and he's struggling with his studies, and Picard is letting him know that, he was undisciplined too, and he got a lot of things handed to him, maybe, and a lot of things came to him, and it caused him some trouble, and he had to realize that he had to buckle down, right? And of course, there is always the subtext, right? That Picard gave the order that led to Wesley's father being killed. Now, Wesley doesn't have a father, and Picard is about the same age as Wesley's father. So it always leads into that idea, so Wesley doesn't have a father. Well, here's obviously a very obvious father figure right here telling him, some advice that Wesley wouldn't get because his own father was killed in the line of duty. Now, some people, of course, with the episode, they don't like the Pack-Leds, right? So we get that storyline. We get the other storyline where Riker takes the Enterprise and answers a distress call, and we get introduced to the Pack-Leds, who are kind of a I don't know, a silly race. I don't know how to describe them. They talk in really slow manner, and they look kind of, they don't look, oafish. Yes, somebody said oafish in chat. That would be good. They don't have an intelligent look about them, right? They look like they could be, very simple, unintelligent folk. So maybe some people don't like that aspect of it. What I find interesting, though, about this episode, like I said, I really enjoy the Picard Wesley part of it. The Pack-Led scenario is interesting because I do like that they aren't just a standard race with like a nose ridge. They at least tried to do something a little different. They tried to play on the fact that maybe not being able to speak very well does not mean you're not intelligent, right? Right, which is something that some people may assume, right? They may assume that if you can't speak well, you're not intelligent. That would be you shouldn't do that, right? And so, Riker and the crew here underestimate the Pack-Leds, and they pay a price for it, right? Geordi is kidnapped, and he is held hostage, and Riker has to free him. Now, this is also, I will say, I just watched this episode a couple days ago as well, to kind of refresh my memory. And I will say, like, if we were in the real world here, like Riker should be like court-martialed and thrown out of Starfleet, because Worf tells him that this is dangerous and the situation needs to be looked into more, and he doesn't even ask Counselor Troy what's going on. She just wanders on the bridge and goes, Geordi's in danger. Why is he over there? Like, Riker doesn't even talk to any of his staff. He doesn't even get he doesn't get any recommendations like Picard. Usually that's the theme of most episodes. He goes around the room and asks everybody's opinion, and then he makes a decision, right? Actually, that was a big theme in Pen Pals as well, and we totally forgot this here. Riker just doesn't do any of that, and he causes Geordi to be held hostage and gets shot all the time. And it's like, come on, Riker, come on, let's get it together, guy, okay? So not a shining moment for Riker. So I get that, but still, I think this episode has a lot of merit, and needless to say, the character building for Picard is huge. And this is going to play into later episodes, which I think makes Picard a very a deep character, right? A very dynamic character. And then poor Riker should have been court-martialed, but oh well. So the next one here, so unnatural selection. So like I said, some of the episodes I really enjoy, and I like them. Unnatural selection is probably not going to be on my rewatch list too often, but I think it is. I think it is an interesting episode. This is the episode where the Enterprise encounters a research facility where they are genetically modifying children, and Dr. Pulaski begins to grow old rapidly. Now, some things I don't like about this episode, obviously, it is just like a straight remake from the Deadly Years from the original series. Sadly, a lot of the original, first and second season TNG are remakes, either stealth remakes or a direct sequel, or such an homage. It's basically a sequel or a remake, and sadly, that kind of detracts from some of them here. And so just kind of seeing that over again here was a little, as somebody who's watched the original series a lot, it was kind of a downer to see, just kind of the aging rapidly again, kind of idea again. But there are a couple things that I liked. I do, I think it's always an interesting topic to bring up genetic modification of people, because that's probably going to happen, and probably should be happening in science fiction. That's when we should work some of these things out in fiction and literature before it happens in real life, so we can start to start to grapple with some of these things. I do think Diana Muldaur actually gives a really good performance in this episode. I know there are some episodes where it seems like, as Dr. Pulaski, she is just like reading off a cue card, and apparently that was true, because she did not want to be on the show. She just did it as a favor to Gene Roddenberry, apparently. And she actually used this episode to get her another job, so she didn't have to come back, in season 3. Which is good, because I think she gave a really good performance here. And so a couple other things, I like the genetically modified children, that they would be telepaths. I thought that was an interesting idea, that maybe something with, trying to introduce betazoids and things like that, just like, that was an interesting development, that they would be a telepath. They also had telekinesis, which, talk about genetic modification. You're not even, usually we talk about like better hearing or eyesight or strength or something, but like they're giving the children telepathy and telekinesis and all this stuff, which is pretty wild. So I like some of those interesting ideas. I also like the framing device of them finding the ship. They find the USS Lantry, which everybody's dead on board, and so that leads them into the mystery, and then they figure it out, solve it, cure Dr. Plastic, and they come back to the Lantry, and they actually blow it up with all of the people on board, all their bodies on board. They destroy it, and I thought that was an interesting framing device, because, like I said, I mentioned a little earlier, in some of the later seasons, we don't get much of a sense of what's going on outside the Enterprise. They're not on a mission. They're not exploring. They're just kind of there. They're just, kind of meandering through space, and something happens to them or something. I thought this really kind of connected it, and shows that, Starfleet has other vessels out here, that they're doing other things. I like that. I like that idea. In this, like I said, not earth-shattering. Sadly, it was just a aging rapidly episode, so it wasn't, groundbreaking in those regards. But I thought it was pretty interesting. All right, the dolphin. Okay, so now this is another one of those episodes, like I'm saying, like coming of age. I can watch coming of age over and over again. I can watch Pen Pals over and over again. The dolphin, I'm probably It's not on my list just to rewatch necessarily. But I thought they did a couple interesting things. First off, again, later seasons, all the aliens just have a different nose ridge. In this one, the aliens are elastomorphs, right? They look like humans, and we're just like, oh, okay. And they're actually playing on the fact that in the first season, some of the alien races were just humans in in a costume, right? And they didn't even do a nose ridge. They were kind of playing on that fact. So, oh, we have these aliens on board and they look exactly like humans. Okay, great. Well, they don't look exactly like humans. They were pretending to look like humans, right? They had shape changed. They had changed. So I like that idea. But the one thing about this episode that stands out, of course, yes, Wesley falls in love or whatever. I don't like any of the so-called love romances too much. But what I really do like is I really like the optimistic take on the future and space exploration in this, right? When Wes is talking to the young, leader of her people, kind of standard thing. He's talking to her and she's been, cloistered and shut away. And because she's being prepared to lead her people, and they tend to always do that, shut those kind of people away and all that. When when he's talking to her, right, he's sharing this vision of the future where it's just like, hey, there's life everywhere, and we're not destroying each other, we're actually becoming friends, and we're becoming allies, and we're meeting new races, new species, new peoples, all this stuff, and it's cool, it's awesome, it's this optimistic version of the future. And like I said, that to me makes this episode kind of stand out. Again, kind of frankly a run-of-the-mill episode, but it stands out with that optimistic version of the vision, I should say, of the future, right? Was what do we see all the other time? We meet an alien species and what? We got to kill it, or it's got to kill us, right? Like, come on. This, like, Star Trek is one of the only ones where it's like you meet new aliens and it's like, actually, we can actually be friends and we can actually explore the galaxy together. This is cool. So I really enjoy that aspect here to an episode that, again, not too memorable otherwise, but a fun, a fun, interesting version of the future, or vision of the future. I keep saying vision of the future, that I like, and not a lot have, not a lot of shows or movies present us. All right, now this next one, I know this is when you're going to get out the pitchforks and stuff. Okay, so here we go. All right, I'm going to click the slide. I've been thinking about this for like weeks. Here we go. Okay, Shades of Grey. I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk about Shades of Grey. Yep. I'm going to say there's some redeeming aspects to it. I am not saying this is a good episode. I am not saying it's my favorite episode. I'm not saying that I will watch Shades of Grey tonight before I go to bed or something like that. I am not saying that, okay? This Shades of Grey is currently the lowest rated episode on IMDb, right? Star Trek TNG enjoys great popularity, great rankings. Even bad episodes are ranked really highly on IMDb, except for Shades of Grey. All right. And I get it. Okay. So I get why, there is some hate for this episode, but we do have to kind of step our way back. Let's go back 30, is it 30, more than 35 years now? Oh my word. So we go back in time, right? Okay. So go back to 1989. There was a writer's strike, okay? We're in a writer's strike right now. History repeats itself. So we were in a writer's strike in 89, and season 2 of Star Trek TNG suffered, right? It suffered. Although I think they managed to pull out some really good episodes in season 2. It suffered. It was shortened, right? Seasons back then usually had 26 episodes. Had about 26 episodes. We only get like 21, I think, in season 2 because it had to be shortened. There were also some other things, right? Like, that happened on Shades of Grey. The studio, Paramount, came to the producers and said, well, you owe us one more episode. And the producers were like, well, we're kind of out of money because the episode Q Who, which is like one of the best episodes ever, ran way over budget, right? They were designing the Borg for the first time. It ran way over budget. The producers were like, well, we don't have any money. And Paramount was like, so give us an episode. We want another episode. Probably would have been better if they would have just said, oh, okay, we'll just put that money in the bank and we'll just start fresh with season 3, but they didn't. They said, we want an episode, so you have to do it shorter and on less money. And, so the producers, that's what they had. So it becomes the only clip show, right? It becomes the only clip show kind of infamously in Star Trek. So it is the only episode where we just get tons of recycled clips from other episodes. Obviously, that is a way to save a ton of cash, right? I don't have to film it. We can just reuse this footage and pad out 45 minutes or whatever shows used to be, and we'll save a ton of money. And so that's what they did. Now, again, I'm not saying this is a great episode. It's not. I'm not saying I'm gonna, it's one of my favorite episodes. It's not. I'm not gonna say, like I said, I'm not gonna watch it tonight or something. It's not on my list of top 10s or anything. But what I'm gonna say about it is that I think there are a few redeeming qualities about it. I like the beginning. If we remember, I should explain, right? The premise a little bit, right? Riker and Geordi and Data are exploring an alien planet. Riker gets hit by something, which they don't know at first is a thorn to an alien planet. He gets infected with a disease, which Dr. Pulaski and Counselor Troy cure by stimulating emotions in him, which those emotions take the form of clip footage, right? So we're going to see memories. Now, yes, some of the memories, Riker wasn't even involved in them, couldn't have remembered them. So, I get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like I said, I'm not saying this is a great episode. What I'm saying is I do like the fact that they were still exploring a planet. Later seasons, I've mentioned this like 3 times, they weren't exploring anything anymore. They were exploring a planet. Positive +1 right there. So you're exploring something cool. And I do like just the idea of how you are trying to build character through like Riker, how he handles the disease and different things like that, showing that he's still making jokes and stuff like this. And I thought that was better than in some later episodes where they tried to develop characters, which I don't really understand what they were doing. But really the main thing here that I would like to say too is I can appreciate they were still exploring stuff. They were trying to develop Riker's character, even though the budget was slashed and they had to basically do a clip episode. But also like this episode here, I know it's a clip show. No, it's not a great episode, but I don't know how this episode is worse than, say, Sub Rosa, or worse than Man of the People, or worse than Violations, or worse than Homeward, right? Usually, I think most of those are in season 6 or 7. I don't see how this episode is worse than those episodes. Because while this is not a great episode, you can tell they had no budget to film this. You can tell nobody's heart was in this episode, really, except for Marina Sirtis, who just manages to hit a grand slam everywhere, anytime she's on screen. You can kind of tell those things, but like, at least it was still Star Trek, right? At least they were still exploring stuff. At least Dr. Pulaski got to be a doctor and tried to do some stuff. At least Counselor Troy was able to use her empathic abilities. At least Riker was able to show that he had this kind of, humoristic view in the face of mortality, right? I like those things. As where in later episodes, I don't know, we get a lot of whining and complaining. We get a lot of, when death is mentioned, we get a lot of whining and complaining instead of facing it with courage and stuff. Maybe I'm letting nostalgia come in, but, I remember watching this episode when it aired and I didn't think it was great. So I still remember that. Didn't think it was great, even though I loved everything Star Trek. I liked some other episodes, but Obviously, like I said, I like other episodes a lot better. Not on my list of rewatching, but I think it has some. I think it has some redeeming qualities that shouldn't be the lowest on the list. There should be at least 10, 15 other episodes down below this one, at least, where we kind of forgot everything. Oh, right. Also, not only do we remember Troy has empathic abilities, we remember Pulaski's a doctor, we remember Riker is kind of, funny in the face of danger because he has this kind of carefree, courageous attitude about himself. Geordi's visor. The later seasons, we forgot Geordi had a visor on, right? He just has a prop. LeVar Burton's just wearing a prop. This way, he uses his visor to look at Riker's legs and leg and where the wound is, and actually get some kind of data from it. I think that's really good. Later in episodes, Geordi just has on a prop. We never really hear what it does for him or anything, except for in these earlier seasons. So I thought that was really good as well. And so that brings me to this. Yeah, are you ready to stone me for heresy? So we have about 15 minutes here, maybe 14 minutes until the session is over. Like I said at the beginning, everybody is on mute, and I do that on purpose so we can kind of keep it from getting too crazy. But if you want to write in a question in chat or a comment, please drop a question in chat right now. We still have a good 14 minutes to where I can answer some questions. If you think I'm totally off base, hey, let me know. I love talking Star Trek. Let me see if I'll go back and chat a little bit and see if there were anything that were mentioned. Okay, so somebody says, haven't seen many of these episodes since they originally aired. The fact that I recall scenes you described tells me these episodes were more powerful than they're given credit for. I agree, absolutely. How can they be so memorable if they're so bad, right? Like maybe they aren't like groundbreaking television or groundbreaking storytelling in some way, but they're powerful for a reason. I agree. And they made a mark on me, right? I just told you, I still remember we got a cat coming across somebody. We still had, I still remember when Shades of Grey aired. I still remember when Peak Performance aired. Now you're talking about episodes that I really like, right? Like you're talking about episodes that seem to have been really, they made powerful impact on people, I think for a reason, because it was like nothing else like on TV at the time, right? It was nothing else. The storytelling was nothing else. We also have, let's see, one of the reasons I disliked the remake of Battlestar Galactica was how much it was the opposite of Star Trek, so dark, bleak, and depressing. Okay, so that's somebody in chat. I would agree with that too. Everything but Star Trek is dark and depressing. It almost seems like. And then somebody says they own the Borg box collection because the Borg is awesome. I agree with that. Any other questions or anything? Let's see. The writers often forgot about Troy's powers or to write her out of episodes where her powers might come in handy. I couldn't agree with that more. There are so many episodes where Troy could have been used, her character could have been explored, her abilities could have been used, and they just didn't do it. They just didn't do it, and I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe things were, there was stuff going on behind the scenes or something. I don't know, but they had many opportunities. I know, what was it? The episode with the Klingons and Worf, reunion, when Kalar came back and Worf and Picard is chosen to be the arbiter of succession. Like Troy doesn't even appear in that episode, I don't believe. And it's like she would have been Picard's cultural attaché, right? She would have been right next to Picard because, she would have been the experts on alien culture. She would have been able to read the Klingon. She would have been able to give advice to him. She wasn't even in the episode. I don't even know. I don't even understand why they were doing stuff like that. I think they probably just didn't know how to use it, right? They just didn't know how to use her empathic abilities without just like giving everything away. Oh, well, they would just know everything. And I think that's I think that could be a trap, but I think more often than not, if you would have just used her empathic abilities, you could have found some really creative ways to use her character, because Marina Sirtis is pretty cool, actually. All right, somebody says I was born the year in the year of our Star Trek 1966. That's funny. And all these episodes are great compared to Spock's brain. Yes, that's the often maligned episode of Spock's brain. Yeah, and then somebody else says Spock's brain is funny, and I'm not saying it's good, but it's funny. I would agree. I think Spock's brain is actually very entertaining. Not necessarily a good episode, but it is an entertaining episode. So it's kind of fun. It is kind of interesting to see what they were doing with Spock's brain. And yes, I do agree. A lot of these episodes are way better than Spock's brain, but I think it's kind of hard sometimes to compare the original series to TNG, actually, in that regard. Any other questions really quick, or any thoughts here? We still have about 9 minutes. I'd like to, if you type something in the chat, I'll definitely share it. Hopefully, I'm not getting as much hate as I thought. Oh, yes. Somebody said Turnabout Intruder. Okay, so from the original series, Turnabout Intruder has to be the worst episode, like ever. Like ever, like like crossing TV shows. Turnabout Intruder has to be one of the worst episodes ever. So I don't saying like I would watch Spock. I would watch Shades of Grey and Spock's brain on repeat rather than watch Turnabout Intruder again. So I think that's something to be said there. All right, so somebody says, I enjoy hearing your perspective and rethinking about these episodes. I love TNG. It was my entrance to Star Trek, but I think the writers missed the mark with the development of female characters. That's why I ended up preferring Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Yeah, well, thank you I'm glad I could give somebody a different perspective on things. So thank you for that. Somebody else says City on the Edge of Forever is probably my absolute favorite episode of Star Trek, the original series. That is an amazing episode. And that is absolutely an amazing episode. Any other thoughts on some of these episodes here? Yeah, we got about 8 minutes or so left. If you want to put something into chat, we can talk about TNG. Oh, this is a good one. You named underrated ones. What about overrated ones? Oh, okay. All right. So now we're gonna get out the stones on this one, because I got a few of these that I think are overrated. I think Who Watches the Watchers, TNG episode. Usually people say that one is an awesome episode. I think that one's highly overrated. Number one is that they say, oh, these are like proto-Vulcans and they're very rational, seeing as how Vulcans were completely irrational until they adopted the philosophy of Sorak. I mean, it makes no sense. So I think Who Watches the Watchers is an overrated episode. Man, that's a good question. Actually, maybe I'll do this seminar next time. Overrated episodes. Overrated episodes. Let's see. There's got to be some later. Now, that might be treading onto some complete heresy there. I don't know if it's overrated. I really do like The Inner Light, which is usually regarded as the best episode. I really like it. So, and it deserves a lot of praise. I think that is a really good episode. I probably maybe 20 years ago would have said that was my favorite episode. But I actually, since it's very Picard focused, I actually like the episodes that show more of the ensemble of the cast. So like, I would actually say I would prefer to watch, say, Peak Performance over watching Inner Light, because we get the whole crew kind of interacting in Peak Performance, whereas The Inner Light is just focused on Picard. Now, I thought it was a really good episode. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a really good episode. I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's actually too overrated, but it is a really good episode. But I think I would prefer to watch a different episode over that one. What is another one? There are some in the later seasons that I think are way overrated. Um, I mean, a Sub Rosa on IMDb is considered to be the second worst episode. I think that's overrated. I think it should be I think it should be way below Shades of Grey. I don't understand that episode at all. Um, I've actually, on my YouTube channel, which is just Dice Geeks, all one word, I've started doing a couple videos where I look at the worst Star Trek episodes and I actually show how we can use some of the storytelling techniques in them to make our better role-playing games, like to be a better game master. So I actually do that because I'm weird and the internet allows us to do whatever we want. So I have those. So those are a few overrated ones. I know, the Time's Arrow. Time's Arrow Part 1 and 2, I hear people give, kind of highly rate those sometimes. I don't know why people like those episodes. I don't know why they like them. They make no sense. Sure, hey, I love Guinan. I love the characters. I love all that. I don't understand the episodes. I don't know what they were doing or why Jack London or Mark Twain are there. I don't know what's going on. I still don't know why Data's head is in San Francisco. I don't know. I think that episode is highly overrated. Yeah, well, honestly, anything in season 6 and 7 is usually overrated, in my opinion. Okay, so controversial opinion. So this is somebody in chat. Controversial opinion. I really liked Star Trek Enterprise, especially seasons 3 and 4. Little off topic, but yeah, I know where you're coming from. What about terrible concepts like warp speed limitations? Okay, so yeah, this gets into some stuff. We only have a few minutes here left, but yes, there are some other episodes in TNG that I think go off the rails. The one with warp speed limits because it's tearing apart space and time. I think they realized that was a bad idea and they just dropped it. That one, I don't know. I didn't really mention that one because I don't think it's highly rated anyway. People don't like that anyway. But yeah, there are some episodes like that episode. I think that would be worse than Shades of Grey in my opinion, because I don't know. I don't know why you would spend a whole episode on that. I don't know what they were trying to do with some of those episodes, like some of those concepts. And then somebody says Sub Rosa is indeed a terrible episode. It felt like Anne Rice Witch Book, meets Star Trek. In fact, it was. It is believed that the freelance writer who submitted the idea, let's say, generously borrowed from an Anne Rice story in the creation of that episode. So you have that. Somebody says, what is the worst Star Trek episode ever? Why is it there's yes. How could Shades, I guess basically the person was trying to say, how could Shades of Grey be the worst Star Trek episode when we have one where Paris and Janeway become salamanders? That is very true. That is a valid question. That is a valid question. How could anything be worse than that? So that's why I think, just kind of why I wanted to do this and kind of why I wanted to look at a few of these episodes and just say, hey, look, a lot of them, some of them I know they weren't outstanding episodes by any means, but at least they have some redeeming qualities to them. And I think some of them should be rated more highly than they are because there are some episodes that certainly went off the rails as it was. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we only have about a few seconds left here of our time. As I mentioned, this is being recorded. I will post it to my YouTube channel maybe later tonight or the next time, or in the next few days. I'll post it there. And we should, so it should be available there if you had to drop off, or if you know somebody who is a Trekker and you want to trigger them with some contrary opinions on Star Trek, you can definitely share it with them. And so with that, our time is up. I thank you so much for joining. I hope your Gen Con online is great. Thank you so much.